This is my passion, life, and the right to hold, the right to all it holds. Blackberry blossoms, marsh iris, the growl of bear at night, light rising and falling upon our lodges, the rivers that bathe us and slack our thirst, and that old plum tree flowering winter with snow. These are the words of Molly Brandt from a wonderful collection by Maurice Kenny, and it is a joy to introduce one of New York's great lyric poets and a distinguished elder of the New York State of Poetry and of the Mohawk Nation, Maurice Kenny. Since all things begin and end with stories, here's the one about how I first met Maurice. I was up in the Adirondacks when I first began at the New York State Council on the Arts, and we were doing a community meeting, a town hall at the North Country Public Radio on how to help the literary community in the Adirondacks, and going back and forth, and Alan Rocco was there from the North Country Public Radio, and Isabella Worthen from the Old Forge Public Library, and other luminaries from the North Country who make literature happen there. And a man stood up in the back, sort of slender, slight man with a silver ponytail, and said, you know, I'd like to know what is wrong with the National Endowment for the Arts and with the New York State Council on the Arts. Why do we receive no funding in the Adirondacks for literature? And a lot of other things that he said, and I didn't know what to say, but he spoke in an orator's voice and impressed me deeply. And within a year or two, we initiated work on the Adirondack Center for Writing, which exists to this day. That was in 1993, and exists to this day now in Saranac Lake, where Mr. Kenny also lives. So it was a very successful tirade that you gave, and that's how I met you.
We made the NEA very unhappy.
I know. You know some of these things from the bio. He was born in 1929 at Cape Vincent near the St. Lawrence River in Watertown, the North Country. Mohawk Irish, Seneca English parents. The scholar Penelope Myrtle Kelsey writes that from his early days in Cape Vincent, Maurice collected powerful images of the North Country land, infusing them with sense, color, and the texture of chicory, hawkweed, and pearly everlasting. Few of his poems escape the signature mark of respect for the land, his engagement of the North Country as a poetic tapestry for all the poet explores, as well as the same land occupied and guarded by the Iroquois people, creates a range of expression and a sense of history that few other writers can match. I'm not going to try to speak in that language, even though you helped me. Maurice studied at Butler University in Indianapolis, later lived in Mexico, the Virgin Islands, Chicago, many other places. He moved to Brooklyn in the late 60s, studied with Louise Bogan, the poet, and he stayed in New York for 25 years. His circle included Allen Ginsberg and Mary Baraka and his fellow artists at New York City's American Indian Community House. His commitment to writing on indigenous New York themes began in earnest around the time of the occupations of Alcatraz and of Wounded Knee in the late 60s and early 70s. A prodigious output of work followed this period, and he received 2 Pulitzer Prize nominations for Black Robe and Between Two Rivers, and the American Book Award for the Mama poems. Also an honorary doctorate in the Wordcraft Circle of Native Writers Elder Achievement Award. But it is for Molly Brandt, de Conwadonde, Molly Brandt, 1735 to 1795, a series of narrative poems on the life of the Mohawk clan mother and sister of the warrior Joseph Brandt, that is regarded as his most important work to date. and most reflective of his essential voice and the artistry and urgency with which he conjures the unremembered, the must-be-remembered if we are to understand who we are now, voices of the Northeast woodlands, its women, men, and two-spirit people, its land, creatures, its plants, and its eternal stories. Not only does he write with a sense of history, but what it means to be a Native author today. He began a lifetime of supporting emerging writers, especially Native writers, by publishing them in Contact 2 magazine and through Strawberry Press. He's a distinguished teacher of thousands of literature students. He also has mentored many Native writers, among them Eric Gansworth, Wendy Rose, Diane Burns. He has given hundreds of readings with his powerful orator's voice. And I last heard him read at Poets House near the Hudson River in Battery Park City a year or two ago at a convening of Native poets from across the country, among them Joe Bruchac and Joy Harjo. He read an unpublished, exquisitely crafted and daring poem based upon his recent visit to a synagogue in Eastern Europe called Synagogue Prague. It has a Hebrew name. It was a long and difficult poem drawing parallels to the genocide of people with Indian names in this country. Afterward, he was engulfed in the arms of the many brilliant and already successful young poets whose ways he began clearing alone on the banks of the beloved St. Lawrence River so many years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce Maurice Kenny.